That radio chick Cheryl Lee here. Welcome to the Still Rockin It podcast, where we'll have music, news reviews and interviews with some of our favourite Australian musicians and artists. We haven't spoken to Dave Faulkner, lead singer, guitarist, songwriter, founding member of the Hoodoo Gurus, for a little while, but they are celebrating 40 years of their debut album release, Age Romeos, March 1984, with the release of a new album, Back to the Stone Age, and a corresponding tour. Let's find out all about it. To catch up on podcasts from other favourite artists, simply go to thatradiochick.com.au.
Hi Cheryl, how are you?
Good, thanks, Dave.
I see your guitar in the background there.
Yeah, it's fake. It's actually a CD player, believe it or not.
The guitar?
Yeah. See that black bit there? You put the CD in there.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty groovy.
Okay, great for karaoke.
Yeah. Well, air guitar.
That's it, exactly.
I'd like to welcome into the Zoom room today, friend of the show, lead singer, founding member, guitarist of the Hoodoo Gurus, Mr. Dave Faulkner. Yay!
Yay! How are you?
Thanks for joining us. I remember we spoke in 2020 when you had your new single hung out to dry out.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Those 4 years just went like a snap of the fingers.
We spoke again in 2022 when you brought out your Chariots of the Gods album.
Yeah.
And here we are again. New album, new tour, lots to talk about.
Well, not a new album per se. It's a slightly reconfigured old album, but with a bonus live album that's new. Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's sort of new. It's new to us now.
Yeah.
Jeepers Creepers, an amazing tour to go with it. Before you embark on your nationwide Australian tour, you're going to America in September.
Yeah, we're doing Brazil and the US again. We did it last year, around about April, May, and it'll be 18 months this time between visits. But no, we went, as I say, last year, had a ball, and the demand was to come on back and do it again. So here we are, and when we go to the US, we're actually going to do the same thing we're doing in Australia, which is the Stone Age Romeos Back to the Stone Age tour, where we play the entire album as part of the show. So we'll get it done first in America. But Brazil is going to be another story. We'll just do a bunch of different things there as usual, because they have their own kind of unique take on what Guru's songs they know. And there's songs there that were hits in Brazil that weren't released as singles elsewhere in the world. So it's, kind of unique for us.
I'm just flabbergasted when I look at this list of dates. So you're there for all of September. You're doing 20 dates or something.
I know, it's pretty crazy. Well, it's what we did last year as well. Basically, it's back to the bad old days of when we were in our 20s or early 30s, when we were playing, as you say, like nearly every night. We jump on the bus and drive overnight between shows and turn up next town and get ready and do it all over again. And it's punishing, but at the same time, we had a taste of it last year. We did it and we thought, how are we going to cope? But in fact, we loved it. It was a lot of fun. Best of all, I was able to sleep on the bus. That was what I was most worried about, because they do move a bit, and, my family's prone to seasickness. So I just thought, what if I just can't sleep? And, I just, by the end of the tour, it'd be a basket case. But no, I was actually, rockabye baby, quite happy.
Well, you must have the fountain of youth, actually. Embark on a tour like that and then come back and hit the road around Australia.
Yeah, the Australian dates have kind of become a bit heavier than what we first planned. I mean, it was the in-between days are filling in now because we managed to get extra shows in a couple of places. So, it's pretty full on.
Obviously, no talk of the retirement work.
Well, maybe see us after this tour. We'll see how we feel. But no, at this stage, we're just having fun. We love playing music. That's the number one thing, is why we still do it. That hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is on stage, is just kind of like, when we get to really stretch our wings and be Superman instead of Clark Kent.
Exactly. And you are going to be really, really good at it by the time you get back.
Oh, I think we're okay at it now. We know how to do it. It's been a while. This isn't our first rodeo, as they say.
Exactly right. But, all those dates in America, it's going to be one hell of a tour here.
Yeah, we'll be definitely, fired up and, playing well, if there's any question of that in anyone's minds anyway.
Oh, I don't think there is. But, most of November, Most of December. Many of the dates, as you say, have sold out already, and others are selling fast. And just for the people in my beautiful town of Adelaide, you are heading here on Saturday, the 23rd of November at the High Street Music Hall. So get onto the Googleometer, find out when the Hoodoos are in your neck of the woods. Yeah,
hoodoo-gurus.net is there's a link there to all the tickets. So you have a look there and come along. Don't wait too long is all I'm saying, because unfortunately, we won't be able to play a second show in Adelaide if that one sells out, which is getting close now already. So the shows everywhere have been just going crazy. They've only been on sale for just over 2 weeks now. And as you say, so many shows are sold out, and we've added more and they've sold out. And we're pretty happy about it, actually.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
We'll be back to speak to Hoodoo Gurus frontman shortly, but let's have one of my favourites from the Stone Age Romeos album, My Girl. I think it's a testament to how much, you know, the fans love the Hoodoo Gurus. So it's called Back to the Stone Age. So
Back to Stone Age.
10 studio albums, well, sort of 11 now, 37 singles, 2 extended plays, 6 compilation albums, 3 video albums. There's a lot to love.
And there's a lot to fill in that show. So, yeah, basically we start the show doing the entire Stone Age Romeos. That's the whole point of this tour. It's going to be the 40th anniversary of Stone Age Romeos. And we begin the set with the first song, and we're going to play them all in order right there. And then we'll go on for the rest of our career for the next however long we stay on stage after that, depending on what people want.
I do love that, because that's how we all listened to that record. You know, it was on vinyl and we played it from woe to go. There was no skip button.
No, there's no ads. No. Yeah, completely. And when we're in America, it's funny, we're going to be doing that same thing, except there were 2 versions of the album. There was the Australian version, then there was the American version, where they changed the order of the songs and they gave it a whole new cover, which was pretty terrible at the time. So we've best forgotten about that particular cover, which wasn't our idea, obviously. But we're going to do the Australian version of the album there as well. So in terms of the actual song order. So they get to, you know, hear it like we meant it to be when we first did it.
Yeah, how you originally planned it. Debut album released in March 84, Stone Age Romeos. That year it won Best Debut Album at the Countdown Music Awards.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a funny story because, you know, Countdown, people probably have no memory of that show now, or most people wouldn't have ever seen it, but it was a very big deal at the time. And even though bands like us and, you know, AC/DC, for example, you know, we weren't particularly their target audience, or vice versa. You know, their audience wasn't our target audience. It was a very big platform for to expose your music and to get known, because everyone watched it. It was the one show on TV every week that nearly all of Australia tuned in. You know, so you had to kind of put up with the fact that there's a bunch of teeny boppers who were mostly wanted to see, you know, teen idol type bands, and, you know, they'd watch us with kind of like, what the hell's this racket going on? But, you know, you were looking at the cameras and saying, well, at least the whole of Australia knows who we are now. So when we won the award at the end of the, you know, we won at the end of the year, it was a bit of a surprise because there were 2 bands at the time that were very much like Countdown favourites, and they'd sold a lot of records, and, you know, no offence to them, they were good bands and all that, but they were considered to be the favourites to win, which was Kids in the Kitchen and Studio Echo. And we were like just this, you know, rock band from Sydney who were just there to make up the numbers as far as most people are concerned. But somehow it all transpired that we got the votes and we won, and the Countdown pet bands didn't kind of, you know, the cameras were on them. They never even knew where we were in the auditorium. We weren't expected to win, so there was no, you know, when they rehearsed it with the cameras in the afternoon, they did not even think about where the Hoodoo Gurus was sitting. So it took them a few minutes to find us when we were walking up to the stage. Things like that. It's very funny.
Well, we all used to run inside at 6 o'clock and turn on the ABC.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
We watched it religiously.
We did. I mean, even twice a week, because they had a repeat on Saturdays, didn't they? Like, so sometimes we watch it twice because you see a clip of some band you never thought you'd see, and there it is on Countdown. Because, you know, as I say, they played a real diversity of stuff. They were mostly, as I say, their audience and what you call a Countdown band were kind of like teen idols, you know, John Paul Young, things like that.
Leif Garrett.
Yeah, exactly, you know. And, you know, of course, and it was all those, you know, number one commercial disco, you know, songs as well, you know, the Bee Gees and all those things. But then you'd see something like the Sex Pistols on there, you know, and you'd never see it elsewhere because that was the show. Everyone was watching the same program. And so it kind of gave us all something we liked at some point, but you had to sit through a lot of things you didn't like.
And it did launch 1,000 bands.
It did. It was known in the industry at the time that if you went on Countdown, your record would go up at least, 15 places in the charts the next week automatically. I don't know if it did for us, but we were on there a couple of times. We went on a lot, but we went on a couple of times. And in fact, we even got to host it once, which I'd forgotten about. But you know how Ray shows old episodes of Countdown sometimes? Well, there we were hosting, Brad and I, introducing, I don't know who was on the show that day, but I can't even remember doing it. But it must have been pretty out-of-body experience at the time because, we weren't exactly their demographic.
Still Rockin It podcast with that radio chick, Cheryl Lee. We're going to hear that song now that Hoodoo Gurus played on Countdown, and we're going to let the host of that night, Susie Q, introduce them, and we'll be back to speak some more with Dave Faulkner straight after this.
Countdown! Hi there, everybody. I'm going to be here with you in Australia for 6 weeks, so if I'm anywhere in your vicinity, do come and see me. And I'm here on Countdown, and I'm certainly enjoying myself. And right now, we're going to go over to live in the studio, the Hoodoo Gurus, and What's My Scene?
What's my scene? What's my scene? What's my scene? Tell me, I gotta know.
You haven't needed Countdown this time. The re-release, the 40th anniversary edition picture disc, #1 Australian album, #8 album, #2 vinyl.
Yeah, it did very well. I mean, luckily unluckily, I don't know. We only had a limited edition, so we couldn't see if we'd plummet in the charts the following week because that was pretty much our whole stock in one week. But I mean, obviously, a lot of people wanted it straight away and knew it was a rare item and picked it up, and so that made it have a high chart placing. Yeah, I mean, when it came out, the album only got, I believe, seeing on some of the interviews I've done, apparently someone said it was 28 when it first came out. So we got to #8 this time, so we finally got in the top 10 40 years later.
Well done.
Oh, well.
Other successes, 2007, you as the founding member of the Hoodoo Gurus gave the acceptance speech when you guys were inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And then you personally inducted into the WA Music Hall of Fame a couple of years later in 2009. So good to receive those acknowledgements.
Kind of bizarre, actually. The ARIA one was funny because, we'd never been nominated for an ARIA award ever in our career. So here we are getting the Hall of Fame after basically not being considered, significant enough to get any sort of nominations prior to that. We got one for album cover, nomination that is. We didn't win it, but we got nominated for Best Album Cover, which is not really something we can completely take credit for. But no, look, it's funny. I mean, awards are better to win them, I suppose, than not, but, it means nothing in the ultimate. More importantly is, can you still listen to the music and enjoy it? And that's something that we're very proud to say that we think our stuff holds up pretty well.
Well, it certainly has. Now, going back a little bit again, Countdown wasn't your very first TV.
Oh, yes.
Was it?
No. We had a relationship with TV from the very beginning. Our very first performance anywhere was actually on a TV program called Simon Townsend's Wonderworld. They did a short story about us, kind of basically snuck in, under their guard because Kimball, our guitarist at the time, when the band first started, Kimball Rendell was one of the guitarists, and he was a filmmaker, and he ended up, going back into film, permanently after, being in the band for a little while. But he knew people on this program, Simon Townsend's Wonderworld, and convinced them to do a story on us because, we could use the publicity, whatever. And it just so happened that the story, by the time it was put together and went to air, was the day before we had our first ever gig. So we're on TV live around Australia. So not live, but, being exposed around Australia the day before we went on any stage. But, it was kind of a funny thing. That program was a kids show, but they also would have up and coming and indie sort of bands. It was kind of interesting that way. That show, it wasn't always putting the chart topping albums. They'd put local Australian bands that were kind of a bit more left of centre, and we were more left of centre than most because we hadn't even played a gig yet.
Well done. And you personally, even before that, you were on TV with your school band, right?
Oh, I was. Yeah, not my band, but at my school over in Perth where I grew up, they used to have this program there, and the school had a singing group rotating group of permanent sort of guests. A bit like Young Talent Time, where they had their own, the young talent team, and then there was some competition as well. There'd be some, 3 singers or something like that competing and singing and getting judged and progressing through to semi-finals and finals at the end of the year. In the meantime, there'd be different themed shows with, music of roaring 20s or something, and we were singing these old-fashioned songs, and we were like this Trinity folk group was what I was part of. So I probably ended up being on it about 4 or 5 times, maybe in a space of a year. Through that, also got to appear on stage with the WA Opera Company as well, because they said, oh, these kids, got some exposure, television experience. They might be able to go on stage and not make a fool of themselves. So they invited us to be part of this group, this opera, which is a Richard Strauss opera called The Gypsy Baron. We were a group of urchins, and I was the head urchin. Out of 3 head urchins, like separate nights, again, because they cycled around so that you get your sleep and you wouldn't be, child labour laws wouldn't be broken or something.
Overworked.
Yeah,
underpaid.
something like that. So I actually got my first stage laugh as part of the Gypsy Baron. Yes, I'm an old stager from childhood. Groomed for success.
All great experience.
As a kid, you loved it, and also getting to learn how things were done, behind the scenes. Obviously you're seeing cameras and seeing a show rehearsed and put together and, recording tracks for it, and all those things were quite illuminating for a kid. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with the opera, just being part of that backstage environment and also a full-on opera and hearing orchestra and, and all that stuff was pretty cool. I don't think it really prepared me for being in the Hoodoo Gurus.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
I was unable to find out what song the Hoodoo Gurus played on Simon Townsend's Wonderworld, so I will just play you the first song from the Stone Age Romeos album, which will probably be the first song you hear the Hoodoo Gurus play when you go to the Back to the Stone Age tour, I Want You Back.
You believe we're all a little crazy. You believe giving everything your best, and you belong with me. So let your mind run free. Welcome to a wonder world.
I want you back. I want you back.
The thing that was more important for me at school, certainly, was we did have a rock band, which was a real band, me and a few other people in my class, and we'd actually play our school functions and also other schools because we were cheap. It cost nothing or very little. And we'd play all the songs that we were listening to as kids, teenagers, whatever, and mixture of whatever, we thought we could play without making fools of ourselves. And that was where I got my first experience singing and performing on stage. And that was where I really learned something that was useful, learned something for me, later in life, because, I'd gotten used to the idea of being on stage in front of people and having a microphone and, not being embarrassed or, whatever, learning how to perform and be confident.
Great learning curve.
Yeah. It's funny though, music was something I was always doing, and that, including that band, but also I was writing songs. We did some songs in that band that were not very good, but I wrote a couple, and that was just what I was doing, without planning. It wasn't like I was going, I want to be a musician or I want to be a rock star or anything like that. I was actually, at that time of my life, I was more famous than my family for being an artist, painting and drawing. Everyone at school, like the teachers and that, all thought that's what I was going to become an artist. So they kind of let me sort of slack off in the more normal schoolwork because they thought, he'll never go to university. He's just going to be a painter or something. And in fact, I did go to university because my marks were okay, and I did architecture because my parents had persuaded me, well, you can't be an artist. If you can draw, you can be an architect. Use your drawing skills for something more employable, rather than, starving as an artist. So I thought, that makes sense. I like architecture too, Frank Lloyd Wright and Le Corbusier and people like that. But when I got to university and studied architecture, I hated it.
And you never went, did you?
Well, no, I didn't go. All I did was play music and go out and, do that, and didn't turn up at lectures. And when I failed out of architecture, I realised I'd come to the crossroads and, what the hell are you doing with your life? And it was obviously music was what I was doing with my life. So I just did that. Yeah. So I became a musician not by default, but certainly not by fantasizing or having had experience on television as a kid or whatever. That meant nothing in that decision. It was just literally that I loved music so much and was writing songs, and that's all I was doing. So I couldn't do anything else, really.
Well, you did try banking, but...
No, I did join the bank because I wanted to get some equipment because I'm not from a wealthy family, so no one was going to buy me I played keyboards then, so no one was going to buy me, keyboards and amplifiers and stuff. So I got a job in the bank to try and
to an end.
Yeah, I got a job in the bank to try and save some money.
Do you want to lend me $200?
Well, I made a mistake a couple of times, but I became a teller eventually, and I ended up losing a few $100s a couple of days at different times, and it just didn't have it at the end of the day. I must have given someone too many 50s or something, and, it can happen. So, banking wasn't necessarily my forte. Eventually, my brother lent me the money to buy equipment. I bought a second-hand keyboard and an amp, and that's when I joined a band, and then that was actually a professional group, and they were a blues group, and it's sort of kind of a bit more of a hip sort of band. And in WA, the blues scene was quite big in Perth at that time, still is, but that was very much the alternate scene in Perth was a blues scene, and this band were quite successful. And I was 18, I joined them, and I was already in this like a full-time job as a musician at 18. I was a pretty amazing feeling. Then it went on from there. My major career was after that. Following year when I formed my own punk band, The Victims, and with James Baker. That was kind of the beginning of me writing and singing my own songs and kind of getting success for that.
Still Rockin It podcast with that radio chick Cheryl Lee. Let's have The Victims, Television Addict. Our guest is Dave Faulkner, lead singer, founding member, guitarist, songwriter from the Hoodoo Gurus.
We're not dumb. Television addicts. We're not dumb. Television addicts. We're not dumb. Television addicts. We're not dumb.
When I was looking through some songs earlier, I came across you guys with the Masters Apprentices doing
Yes.
radio. How did that come about?
Brad is a huge fan of the Masters Apprentices, so are we all, but Brad in particular was very much excited by this band, and he got to meet Jim Keys somehow. I forget how that happened, but they were coming to some kind of, had an anniversary of that record or their formation or something, and they wanted to do something to celebrate that, and so the idea was floated somehow to get the Hoodoo Gurus to collaborate and do a remake of their single, Turn Up Your Radio. So, yeah, we're totally into it. And it sounds great. It's really good. You can't beat the original. It's such a great song, and the Masters' own version was wonderful, but I think it's a pretty rocking version, so, it didn't turn out too shabby.
I really like it. Well done. And, of course, we love the Masters because they're from Adelaide.
Absolutely love the Masters. They're not talked about enough. And what an amazing story. They did a demo, which they sent across to Sydney, to Festival Records, I think it was, and it was for the song Undecided. It was just a demo. They'd just written it around that same time and just went to the studio and knocked it off. Next thing they know, they hear it on the radio. Festival Records put it out without even signing up to a record deal. They heard it on the radio, their first single, and we're a success. We're on the radio already, and they didn't even have a contract.
It was called Undecided because they couldn't decide what to call the song.
It's a great song. And in fact, it's my phone ringtone. I use it for my alarm to wake me up because it's such a raw, loud riff. Certainly wakes me up from any sleep. I can hear it in any loud, this venue as well. It's just loud noise. Play the riff now so you know what I'm talking about. Pretty good.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
I'm going to go one better than just playing you the riff. Going to play you the whole song, The Masters Apprentices, Undecided, and then we're back to say farewell to Hoodoo Gurus Dave Faulkner.
You gotta give it a little loving, honey. If you want a lot of love in return.
I was just hoping that you might be able to give a little bit of advice because there's no denying that the current music industry is difficult to navigate. But when you guys started, the industry had its own difficulties, including quite unscrupulous representation. You're still owed a great deal of money, unpaid royalties from the 80s.
Yes, we are. We've never been paid a royalty for our first album over in the US, which is weird. Well, it's complicated, but basically, we signed to a small label and then that label did a side deal, but they did it for their catalogue. They got an advance for their whole catalogue of artists. The American label was recouping that money off them, and whenever we'd ask them to say, well, how much does our record earn? They would say, you must ask your own label that. Well, our label was not paying us, so we had no one to ask. To this day, never received a royalty for that album in America.
Nowadays, it's sort of like a whole new plethora of
pitfalls.
Thank you. Any advice for new, younger, maybe less experienced bands coming up that maybe you can save them making some mistakes along the way?
Sure. Well, one very simple bit of advice is to, besides, seeing a lawyer before you sign anything and making sure that it makes sense, make sure that your publishing doesn't get locked up. The publishing is the money you get as a songwriter when you write a song and it's recorded by yourself or your own band or other people. There's money paid to the band or the performer for a recording, but also the songwriter, whether it's your song or someone else's song, there's a little bit of money goes to that person. That's called publishing. So sometimes people sign a deal, have a record contract for their band, then that deal goes away, but the publishing is still signed up because it didn't end. So the idea is to make sure that if you do sign a publishing at the same time as you're doing a recording contract, make sure that the two expire at the same time. So if they're not giving you money to make a record, they don't get to keep any money or share of the money you make as a publisher if you make a record for someone else. So keep the publishing so it's coterminous. So if one deal ends, the other deal ends at the same time. Unless, of course, they're separate, completely separate organizations. You might get a publishing deal with one company who are not related to the record company you sign with, and that might be a separate commercial decision you make. But often with a band starting out or an artist starting out, the deals will be exactly with the same entity, where they'll be like, we'll get your publishing, we'll get your record contract and blah, blah, blah. Even demand a piece of your merchandise and live work sometimes. They call it a 360 deal, which is also equally obnoxious. So be careful about all those things. Don't sign things away forever because, when one component goes, you should be free for all the other bits to be free again as well. But sometimes they aren't. Mm-hmm. Complicated thing. Another thing, try to get reversion. So that, if after a certain amount of time, that record that you made for that label and they've made their money back on it, so that in fact they're making profit still, so that maybe say 10 or 15 years after the deal finishes, you get that album back completely and they don't own any of it and don't get any of it. That's called a reversion. Try and get those as well. So, because the biggest thing is, of course, like us with our first album, we can't get that back in the US. We've got it for everywhere else in the world, but not in the US. And we unfortunately don't have a reversion for that album. So it's going to be forever owned by someone else over there, and they probably still won't pay us forever. A warning to you all.
Advice. Wonderful advice. And here's some advice from me. As our mate Molly would say, do yourselves a favour. If you haven't got it already, grab the Back to the Stone Age album and grab your ticket when the Hoodoo Gurus make their way to your town.
Back to the Stone Age is only probably available on CD now. That's going to be still out there. If you're lucky, you might find one of the albums, the double vinyl version, limited edition. Might get a couple of record stores still, if you're lucky, but probably easy to get the CD at this point. But either way, we're going to be there on November 23, and come on down.
Yep, we'll see you down the front.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
No worries, mate. Thank you.
Well, have a great trip to the US and Brazil.
Oh, thanks. Yes, indeed. I'm not a gibbering idiot. I'll look forward to seeing everyone.
Yeah, we'll see you when you get back.
No worries, mate. Thank you. Bye.
Still Rockin' It podcast with that radio chick, Cheryl Lee. This month we are celebrating 60 years. Yes, the 60-year anniversary of the Beatles' visit to Australia. So I've dug this one out for you. From the album Then and Now, Australia Salutes the Beatles, here's A Hard Day's Night by the Hoodoo Gurus.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog.
You're with Cheryl Lee, that radio chick. Thank you so much for joining me on the Still Rockin It podcast. Hope to catch you again next time. Get out when you can, support Aussie music, and I'll see you down the front.